Well, we're glad that you're back listening to Talking with Tad. You know that there are less than 30 days to election, November 3rd. But what's even more incredible, that it is only a couple weeks to October 13th, and that starts the early voting. Ladies and gentlemen, we need each and every one of you to engage to make sure that you're taking 10 people outside that sphere of influence. All those Republicans, will get other Republicans you're not real familiar with, that might not be your friend, but will become your friend because you're going to engage with them and get them to know about the candidates. And that's what we're doing again today, is that we are actually going to engage again with another candidate. And I am so pleased that today we have Justice Boyd, and I'm going to call him Judge. I just found out that when you're saying the full name, you're going to say Justice Boyd. But when I address him in without the last name, I get to say Judge. So I just wanted to clarify that to make sure you understand that fact. But we are really excited to have him today with us, so you get to know him, learn about him. Why did he become a lawyer? Why did he want to become a judge? He could be doing so many other things, but I have a feeling that serving the people is important. So let's get started to meet our new, well, he's not a new judge. He's been around since 2012 as Justice Boyd on the Texas Supreme Court. But let's find out more about him. So Judge, welcome to Talking with Tad. Let me hear a little bit more about you.
Well, thank you, Tony Ann. It's an honor to be here, and I just love what you're doing with this Talking with Tad program, and honored to get to be on it. I'm an Air Force brat. My dad went in the Air Force at 18, and within a year, after being stationed up in New Jersey, married a young girl from the neighborhood who was way too young. They ran off and eloped, and I was her third child, and she was 19 when she had me, if you can believe that. So.
Wow.
He stayed in the Air Force my entire growing up time. We moved all over the world. I had 3 years in Tokyo, Japan when I was young, and then all over the South and DC, and spent 3 years of high school in Germany. And then he got transferred to Austin right before my senior year of high school, and I graduated from Round Rock High School and left and went to Abilene Christian University, where I got a degree in biblical studies, and moved back to Austin and served as a youth and family minister for a church in Austin for 5 years. That was 83 to 88. Kind of tells you how old I'm getting to be, but I spent 5 years in youth and family ministry. During that time, I married my wife, Jackie, who I had met and dated some when I was in college at Abilene. She was 2 years behind me. So after she graduated a couple years later, we married in February of '86, and been married 34 years now. We've got 3 children, all in their 20s. We had twin baby girls in '92, and then a son 17 months later. So we had 3 kids all under the age of 18 months for a while there. Somebody asked me how many wives I had to have that, but she was busy during that time, and we married. If you know anything about youth pastors, it demands some level of coolness, and I was really cool back in my 20s, but I could already foresee I wasn't going to stay cool long enough to do that forever, and so I decided I needed to get a graduate degree of some sort. And it was actually a very, I think, kind of providential thing, if not, then a complete fluke. But an old college buddy called me one time and said, "You remember back when we were freshmen in law school, we used to talk about in college. We used to talk about going to law school. Well, I'm going to take the LSAT, the admission test. Why don't you take it with me?" And so I thought, yeah, I really need to get a grad degree, and law school's pretty broad and opens a lot of doors. And so I decided to take it. And the week before the test, he backed out, and I ended up taking it. And here I am. Of course, he and I are still really good buddies to this day. He never did take the test, but I took it. I did very well on the test. I was an AB student all through school, including college, but somehow what they expect of you as a lawyer and as a law student clicks with me pretty naturally. So I did really well on the LSAT, ended up going to Pepperdine Law School out in California on a scholarship.
Nice.
And the first and only lawyer in my family. So I had no idea what I was getting into or what I was going to do with it if I was able to do well enough to keep the scholarship, which I did. I ended up serving as editor-in-chief of the Law Review and moot court champion, and graduated #2 in my class out there. But I always wanted to be back in Texas. I had spent a year in Del Rio when my dad was in Vietnam. We lived in Del Rio, and then I spent 4 years in San Antonio, and then that 1 year in Austin. And I just always wanted to come back to Texas. So was fortunate to be able to come back from Pepperdine and start practicing law here in Austin. So that's how I became a lawyer. It was, as I say, in my view, providential, and others who don't share that faith may be lucky, but here I am.
There's no question that God's hand had to play in your life. I mean, for your friend to say, let's go do this together, and he backs out and you continue. This was the doors that were supposed to open for you. And as I said, and I didn't know this part about you, and there was no question, you do serve. That was you're a person that enjoys giving and serving the people, and you did that at a very young age. So thank you for doing that. But I'm glad that you decided to become a lawyer and start practicing. Now, what drove you to become a judge?
Well, that's also, I think, pretty providential. I practiced law for 8 years for a firm here in Austin, general civil litigation work. I was trying cases all over the state. I was handling appeals all over the state, and had gotten to know through an organization here in town and through mutual church friends, had gotten to know John Cornyn, who at the time was on the Supreme Court. When he became Attorney General, he called and asked me, and shortly after he became AG, to come and serve as his deputy in charge of civil litigation. So I left. I had just made partner, but you couldn't say no to that, and I left the firm in 2000 and served with him till the end of 2002 when he went for the Senate, and then I continued to serve for about 9 months with then Attorney General Greg Abbott. Well, all of that work enabled me, when I returned to the firm, to build the firm's government litigation practice. So a practice in which I both represented and sued the government, depending on who was hiring me, to deal with particularly state government level issues. And did that from 2003 until the end of 2010. And during that period, was hired by Governor Perry's campaign to represent them on a variety of election code and government matters. And that's how I became acquainted with Governor Perry and the people, Deidre DeLisi and Ray Sullivan and others that were working for his campaign, just serving as their lawyer, outside lawyer. Well, in December of 2010, I got a call out of the blue from Ray Sullivan, who was serving as chief of staff, saying that they were in a bind and governor needed a new general counsel right away with the session beginning in a couple of weeks. And so I dropped everything and handed off all my clients and left and went to the governor's office and started in January of 11. By September of 11, he had named me as chief of staff for the governor's office, and I served in that role as his chief of staff for about 1 year and 5 months. In the meantime, Dale Wainwright, who you'll remember, called and told me that he was retiring, and would I pass that on to the governor, let him know he would need to appoint someone. I tell everybody I'm the Dick Cheney of the Supreme Court, because you may remember that he was appointed as the head of the search committee for vice president and ended up appointing himself. And I have a similar story. The governor asked me to head up the search for who he should appoint to replace Dale Wainwright. We interviewed 20 some odd people. I knew I was in a position where I could put my name in the bucket, but honestly, my commitment to public service is not as strong as you give me credit for. My wife and I had decided I really needed to get back into private practice, and we had 3 kids, all in private colleges.
Oh, wow.
Hannah and Abby went to Abilene Christian, and our son Carter went to Savannah College of Art and Design. So just financially, we felt like we needed to get back into private practice pretty quickly. But after I gave the governor the list of people that we had interviewed and told him who I thought he ought to focus on, a couple of weeks later, he said, well, that's a great list, but I'm going to appoint you to the Supreme Court. And my first reaction was, no, 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 Governor, and part of it was financial. Part of it was, honestly, I loved being a lawyer for politicians, but I never wanted to be the politician. And I had never run for any office before. All my work for Cornyn and Abbott and Perry had all been as a lawyer, a legal advisor, perhaps a strategy advisor, but not political strategy.
Mhm.
But again, if you know Rick Perry, and he knows how to twist an arm or two,
Very good.
there was just really, when I stopped to think about it, there was no way I could say no, and so I was appointed in December of 2012, and it's just been a great honor and blessing to get to do it.
And thank you for saying yes. I think obviously you have a vast knowledge in many different areas. So thank you for that. But now tell me, so you were appointed in 12. When did you run? I think it was 6 years ago. Is that right?
Right. So they're 6-year terms, and if a vacancy opens during the 6-year term, the governor can appoint someone, and the Senate has to confirm.
Right.
But you only serve until the next general election. And as it turns out, the term I was appointed to had 2 years left, and the next general election was in November of 2014. So I had to hit the ground immediately to, raise the funds and go out and build the network to run and win in 2014. I did not have a Republican primary opponent. I did have a hardworking, very diligent general election opponent. So they always say there's only 2 ways to run: unopposed or scared. And I can tell you I like unopposed a lot better.
I would imagine.
But we were able to prevail in November of 14 pretty handily, thanks really to work like people like you. I think if I had done nothing, I still would have won, not by near as many points, but I still would have won. But as you know, this year's different. And that's why we really appreciate all you're doing with this program.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think it's so crucial that people realize that they need to connect with you. This is a great way to connect, to get to know the rest of the story, as they would say, and to be able to reach out, like I say, to at least 10, if not 20 people, because a lot of times we find that Republicans well, I don't know them, so I can't vote for them. This way they can get to know you, because you have to campaign across the whole state, not just in one district or one area. It's the whole state, and that is a really big job. So I would imagine you have been in a number of places lately, and maybe on Facebook, which I think we can see we can go to your website, which we can see on the slide. But where have you been? Can you tell us where have you been lately and how you've connected with people?
Yeah, well, because of this COVID situation, the truth is I haven't been to many places this time. In 2014, about halfway through the campaign, my wife suggested that we pull over at this historic courthouse down near Goliad and take a picture on the steps. And so we did and posted it. And by the time the campaign was over, I had my picture on the front steps of 217 of the 254 county courthouses. So I was really looking forward to going back this year and completing that. We did get another 20 some odd early in the campaign, but once COVID hit, there's a sweet couple in Abilene that hosted a nice event for me in 2014, and they wanted to do it this year. And they said, look, if you want to still do it in person, we will, but they're 80 years old, they're elderly. And I just wasn't going to be the person that put them at that kind of risk not knowing for sure what to expect in terms of the pandemic early on. Others that we had scheduled events at, contacted us and said, well, I'm not going to be the person that lets you put me at risk. And so we had to cancel some events at their request. As a result, really what our focus has been on is social media and more traditional media marketing. I really encourage everybody, if you would, to look at my Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever you may prefer to use. We've been rolling out for the last few weeks. Your friend Erica Watley's been helping us roll out these endorsements, and I'm particularly proud of these endorsements, and would just urge people to take a look and see, because you hear, I mean, I'm proud to be part of the Republican Party, because the Republican Party, much more than any of the others, understands what a conservative judge is, which doesn't mean necessarily politically conservative, but judicially conservative, and understanding the very limited role that judges play to apply the law and not write the law. And as a result, I'm very proud that my endorsements come from Democrats, Republicans, women, men, young, old, plaintiffs' lawyers, defense lawyers, every race, ethnicity, and geographical region of the state, because these folks appreciate and understand that when a case comes in front of me, I'm not going to decide it based on my political, philosophical, personal preferences, and they're going to get a fair shake. And so we're really proud of that. What your folks could do, look for those, retweet them, repost them, share them, because if all I'm doing is sharing these things with people that already follow me, well, I'm not getting any new votes. They're going to vote for me anyway. At least most everybody that follows me. So yeah, that's where your folks can really be helpful, is helping to get this information out to their social media circles that I can't reach.
Well, I think now, after getting to know you at this point, that you end up, they can go on to your website, they can endorse you now because they've gotten a real insight of who you are, which I love. And then they can go out there and go ahead and share or retweet or whatever it is they need to do, because that's important. That's how other people are going to get to know you. Well, now as we start to wrap this all up, and I really can't thank you enough for sharing all of that information, but there's always that one last thing that Talking with Tad does, and that's sharing a fun fact with our friends that have come on. So today, will you be able to share a fun fact with us?
Yes, but I should say I really appreciate the heads up in advance that you would ask me to do that, because I'm boring enough it would have been hard to come up with something. So I'm gonna share one with you, and then I've got to share one final little one at the end. But
okay.
Here's a fun fact about me. I told you I was in ministry for 5 years with a church here in Austin. Well, in 2005, we came back from Pepperdine in 1991 and have been here and been back at that same church and raised our kids there, and we're still there. Well, in 2005, the elders of the church asked my wife, who had been a school teacher for many years, to serve as the children's minister. And so she's been doing that now for 15 years, serving as the children's minister at this church. And I only lasted 5. So I tell everybody they know which one of us is the better half. So one final fun fact, I have a dog named Bailiff. Bailiff, which sounded like a really cool idea 6 years ago this month when we got him right before the election last time in 2014. He's a sheep. Hey, Bailiff, come here. Come here. He's a 90-pound sheepadoodle, a big fluff ball. Hey, buddy.
He's precious.
There we go.
Hey,
and he has his own Instagram page. If you go to Bailiff the Sheepadoodle on Instagram, now I'll say my wife and daughters have not kept it up as much over the last few months as I would like, but it's their realm, not mine. But that's my buddy and my sidekick, Bailiff.
Oh, I love that. Is fabulous. Thank you. Well, Judge, I will tell you, this was been a fabulous interview. I had no idea all the inside about you, and I can't thank you enough for sharing that and being here. And again, ladies and gentlemen, you have to go out and share the information about Justice Boyd so that we can add to his numbers and get the vote out, because it's all, as we've heard, we are not doing straight ticket, we are doing individual votes, and there's no question you need to vote for Justice Boyd. Thank you.
Thank you.